What's up, guys? It's Mr. Frosti here, aka the People Supplier, and class is now in session. Today, we're going to be exploring how to use compression and the basics of what's going on that little plugin that's on your screen. Now, before we get started, there's a couple of terms that we're going to have to look at to understand why compression works the way it does. And for that, we're going to go over to our whiteboard. So let's get started. Now, one of the first things that we need to understand before delving into the world of compression is what dynamic range is. Dynamic range is defined by the Oxford Languages as the range of acceptable or possible volumes of sound occurring in the course of a piece of music or performance. It's defined by Mr. Frosti as negative infinity decibels up to 0 decibels, or however loud your song can handle. Now, before we get started learning how to use compression, first we must understand what compression is. In music, it's commonly referred to as dynamic range compression, and it's defined by Wikipedia, as an audio signal processing operation that reduces the volume of loud sounds or amplifies quiet sounds, thus reducing an audio signal's dynamic range. In Frosti terms, it means it levels out the quiet and loud sounds to match in decibels, or at least be close in decibels. So now that we've gotten those out the way, let's go ahead and take a look at an actual compression plugin and see how we can use it in our everyday music making processes. So we've made it to our desk. We're sitting now in front of our computer and looking at our DAW. And in this DAW, we want to use a compressor. So let's go ahead and get started on understanding how we're going to be using compression in our music. Our teaching tool for today is going to be within Reason Studios, and I'm going to be mostly talking about the MClass compressor, as you can see here on the screen. We're also going to look a little bit at Reason's channel dynamic compressor because it has a couple of features that you would probably find on some other plugins that you're not going to find on the MClass compressor. So one of the first things that we want to understand going on here in our compression is the input gain. Now, as you can see also here on the dynamic comp, we have an input gain. These are pretty much self-explanatory in the sense that it takes the gain of the incoming signal and you can either lower it or raise it. Not much to talk about there. So let's go ahead and talk about this next one on the MClass compressor called the threshold. Now, this is where it might get a little tricky as far as trying to understand what's going on. As you can see, there is a number next to the threshold that says negative 17.9 decibels. This is going to be your ceiling. And what I mean by ceiling is it's going to be where the compressor begins to start working on the incoming signal. Basically what that means is if your signal is louder than 17.9 decibels, this is where the compressor is going to start to take effect. As you can see over here on the dynamic compressor, we also have a threshold area and its default is at negative 26 decibels. It could be different for whichever compressor you're using. There are a lot of compressors in this world and there's a lot of different plugins, but all of them generally speak the same. So now that we know that the threshold is where our compressor starts to do its work, let's go ahead and talk about the ratio and how the ratio is related to the threshold. So as you can see here, we're hovering over the ratio and it says 4.0 colon 1. Now, if you know anything about ratios, that means it's a 4-to-1 processing signal. So if we have it here at a 1-to-1 ratio, pretty much this compressor is not going to do any work at all. So when it hits negative 17 dB, like how we have here, when it hits that point, nothing's going to happen to your incoming signal. It's just going to be as loud as it was before, and it's not really going to affect your incoming signal at all. Now, if we take it and we go up to the very top, which is infinity to 1, now, as soon as your signal hits negative 17.9 dB, the compressor is going to start working to make sure that nothing goes above negative 17.9 dB. So, the way that we talked about threshold being your ceiling, your audio signal now is going to hit a wall, and it's not going to be able to go above that wall because the compressor is making sure that all the audio signal is not going any further than this. So it won't get any louder than this. It'll allow everything that's under it to stay at the same volume, but once you get here, it won't let your signal get any louder than that. Now, what we're gonna go ahead and do here is listen to an example of a little piano I have playing here. Now, if you watch the meter on the MClass compressor, you'll see that there's incoming audio, but watch how having the ratio at 1:1 does absolutely nothing over here, where it shows you how much gain it's keeping from going over that threshold. Now, as we can see, there's actually nothing happening at all. What we're gonna do though is go ahead and crank the ratio all the way up so that we can see the compressor in full action. Now, in order to get a better representation of what the ratio and the threshold are doing here together, I'm gonna go ahead and take our audio signal and turn it up as loud as we can get it. Right now, it's a little quiet and it doesn't seem to be going above that threshold of negative 17.9 too much. Now, we could actually do this one of two ways. We can do this by using our input gain and cranking it all the way up. Or we can take our threshold and bring it all the way down. So you can either use your input gain to get your audio signal to reach that threshold, or you can just bring your threshold lower so that your input signal is being affected at a lower volume. Now, as we can see, the compressor is working super hard here and keeping that signal right at negative, what do we have here now? Negative 34.9 decibels. So that means as your signal's coming in, the compressor at infinite to 1 is making sure that no audio goes above that 34.9 decibels. Right now we're gonna leave it at a cool 23.5. If we look down here at the piano roll, you'll see that I have it going at different velocities so we can actually see and hear how the piano is affected. So now, let's talk about the next part. The one thing that I don't want to skip over, but that you're not going to have on every single compression plugin, because some of them do it automatically and some of them don't, is this right here, the soft knee. So when we have this turned off, technically it's called a hard knee, but when we turn it on, it's called a soft knee. I didn't understand what a knee was for a very long time, but after I understood what it was, it made using compression so much easier and so much more effective. A hard knee is going to create a sort of feeling that the compression is happening almost instantaneously. So as soon as it reaches that threshold, the compression is going to sound like it's happening right then and there. Turning on the soft knee allows the compression to process that signal over a period of time rather than making it happen instantaneously. Now, the soft knee correlates very much so with the attack, which we'll get into next. So some people don't really use the knee that much because they believe that the attack and the release do that job better. But it's really up to you. So now let's talk about the attack. The attack and the release are going to be referred to in milliseconds because compression happens at a very quick pace. The attack is used to specify how quickly the compression reacts to the audio signal that's coming in. So if we bring it all the way down to 1 millisecond, that means as soon as the audio signal hits that threshold, it's going to start the compression. If we watch the little green meter here, we can see that it's happening a lot faster than it was before. Now, if we take our attack and put it up to 100 milliseconds, you can see that the green meter is not reacting as quickly to the compression. So now, instead of it happening right at the 1 millisecond mark, now any audio that's still over the threshold at 100 milliseconds is what the compressor is starting to compress. So now let's talk about the release. The release does the opposite of what the attack does, in the sense of the attack is for when the audio signal first touches that threshold, so the audio signal coming in hits the threshold. The release is more so for after the audio signal is no longer at that threshold. So as the audio signal begins to fall in volume, the release is important for how long the compression continues to work on the audio signal, if that makes sense. So if we have a very quick release, then as we watch the green bar, we can see that not only is it reacting slowly, but it's also releasing very quickly. Whereas if we turn it all the way up, we can see that that green bar lasts a little bit longer because the compression isn't letting go of the signal as quickly. Now, on the MClass compressor, it has this really cool feature called Adapt Release. And basically what that does is it allows the MClass compressor to kind of read how quickly the audio is falling from that threshold and adapt the release so that it sounds more natural rather than mechanical.
Mr. Frosti.
Do you make hot beats? Are your fingers scorched? Is your studio always on fire? Cool it down with the crisp sounds of the Ice Pack Volume 1. Custom drums, custom loops, and custom Europa patches that'll bring the chill you've always been looking for. Link in the description below. Europa patches only work within Reason Studios or Reason Plus. No studios were harmed in the making of this commercial. For free kits every time they drop, become a patron by following the Patreon link below. The Ice Pack Volume 1. Frostbite for your ears.
So that's all I have for today. If you guys have any thoughts, if you guys have any cool ways that you use compression, please let me know. Drop it down there in the comments. Tell me about some of the cool things you do. And if you have cool projects that you want to send so that I can hear what's going on and possibly talk about it in my next video, go ahead and send it over to the email down below at mrfrostibeats@gmail.com. As always, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me, Mr. Frosti, the People's Supplier.
This is Mr. Frosti with the cold facts. I'ma show you how we go record tracks. First the main track, then the dubs hit. Then some ad-libs, I might double this. What? Cold facts. Record tracks. Then the dubs hit. I might double this.